Welcome back to the Cinnamon Effect. Thanks for being here. Today I have Lauren King with me, and she is the founder of Motherhood Meals. She supports women in the 4th trimester in the postpartum phase, and she does a meal delivery service that I think is just incredible. And the subject of postpartum is so important to me because I had kind of a rough experience in my postpartum phase. So I love that Lauren supports women in that phase of their life. And I'm so happy that you're here with me today, Lauren.
I'm so thankful too.
Yeah.
It's funny how it kind of came to fruition.
I know. Like all of this just feels so like aligned, you know?
Okay. You're like last minute. I'm like, okay, let's do it.
Yeah. Last minute. Are you in? Are you out? No, I would have made space for you at a different time, of course,
Totally.
But it worked out so well. And I think with, some people get a little nervous podcasting, right? It's like a little out of your comfort zone, but it's like, I think just don't overthink it and just do it.
I know. You're like, don't overthink it. I was like, okay, don't overthink it. Don't.
Yeah.
Brain, don't overthink it.
I'm still trying to not overthink it myself because, it's just putting yourself out there, but it's good.
Great.
It's so great. Yeah. So Lauren and I live like 2 neighborhoods apart from each other.
We do.
And I feel like we originally kind of met through social media.
We did.
Yeah.
I think you had actually, Nikki had her second baby. And then she had posted something about my meals because she had already planned to have her own meals. And then because she's Miss Jupiter.
Yes.
A couple other women, including yourself, were like, well, we'd like to gift more meals to Nikki.
Yes.
And so that's, I think, how we kind of first started.
Yes.
And I think I had heard or seen about you, in spots. And so I was like, oh, okay, this is great. And then I think you were like, oh, I'm in Ocean Walk. I'm like, oh, I'm in Olympus.
Yeah. Like so close. Right. So I gifted the meals to Nikki. I forgot about that because I was thinking we just started like talking, but no, it was because
it was that
gifting the service.
And then you were doing the feng shui stuff,
yes.
all of that. I'm like, oh, and you do real estate too, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So
yeah. I'm kind of a mixed bag of tricks,
I was like, wait, I think she does this too.
It's kind of like a lot of things.
And then we finally met each other at Jeff's celebration of life. And
yes.
I'm like, that's Kimberly.
Yes. And you were providing meals to his family as well.
I was, yes. So with Nikki, I'm kind of all in the family there. When Jeff was diagnosed with cancer, Nikki had some leftover broth and brought it over to him. And at the time, he wasn't able to eat anything. It was really hard for him to keep down food, but he was hungry. You have that feeling of hunger. And so he tried my bone broth and he was like, this is what I want to be drinking. And so it was almost like about a year and a half, I think, where I'd kind of go on and off. It was helpful when he was going through chemo. And when, I guess when you do the radiation and whatnot, it can be really painful to eat.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of the thing he looked forward to. And Nikki's mother-in-law, Matt's mom, is just wonderful, the sweetest person.
Shout out to the Arnsman family. Seriously. Yes. We had Nikki on episode 2 of the podcast. So it's a family that's very near and dear to my heart, of course. And I love that you were able to support them in that way. So has that kind of do you provide meals? I mean, to mothers, but do you do other families as well?
Yeah. So it started really right on mothers. But because postpartum is a time of healing and restoring, that can kind of go for anything, right? Any illnesses. I've just been supporting a mom who had explant surgery.
Oh, wow.
And she's kind of on her healing journey. And she's like, I want to start fresh and new. So I've been feeding her for about a month or so. So it's, everyone's a little different. I think everyone focuses on the mother, but I like to remind people that, the food that I do make there are ingredients that will help you heal in the postpartum phase, but homemade nutritious food is good for your body at any point in time.
Totally.
So I've had people where they're like, oh, I'm under the weather. I'd love to have some food. I want soup. I want to, and that's the principles of postpartum meals are warm, nourishing, easily digestible, which are things you want when you're sick too, because your body is trying to fight whatever and you need time to heal. So.
Okay. So I want to get into this, I'm like, I feel like, we got
it's
like
hard.
a lot of questions.
I can go
here.
on. I can go deep down in that.
No, I love it. I love it. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about you and how you came down to Florida. You moved in 2019.
Yes.
Okay.
So we moved November 2019, literally November 1st, because we had Halloween in New York. And then moved down here, and we first were in Delray Beach.
Okay.
I had a roommate, a former roommate that had moved from New York down to Delray. And so I was like, well, at least I have one friend.
Yeah.
But my husband was commuting all the way up to Palm Beach Gardens. And originally we thought like, oh, that should be really easy on 95.
Oh, yeah.
Turns out it's not.
No, not
and he was
easy.
like, I don't want to do this drive. It's an hour-ish both ways. And in the evening time, it was pretty rough. So then we moved up here March 1st, 2020, into Jupiter and, unpacked. My mom came to help us unpack, and then the world shut down,
Well, and to backtrack, you had just had your daughter.
Yes.
And you moved 6 weeks later.
6 weeks later.
So I really kind of want to talk about your postpartum journey and how stressful. First of all, did you have someone help you pack?
I did. So it was really, I will give a big shout out to my mom. She came and stayed with us for 5 weeks.
Oh, nice.
And that wasn't really her intention. But it just happened that way. I ended up with an emergency C-section. And so that put another, I'm like, oh, okay, great. Now I get to move.
Yeah.
I physically, I'm told not to move.
Right.
And so I think for my recovery, I was probably much better than most women are if they've given birth vaginally, where they're like, I feel great. This is fine. I don't need to rest. Where with me, I really did have to rest because it's, a major surgery. So my mom stayed with us for 35 days. She made all my meals.
Wow.
She walked our dog every morning. And then George, my husband, was actually having to come down here to Florida. So it was like there was this intermission where my mom slept in my bed with me because we lived in an 1,100 square foot apartment in New York.
Yeah, yeah.
And so my husband was on the couch, thank God. And, it was a really wonderful time because my mom kind of did everything for me right then and there. Which it goes back to that, I think, there's no better person than your mom to take care of you.
Yeah.
And I think just that nurturing sense, and my mom's a very nurturing person. So, I thought about it. I was like, when you sent these questions, she never complained once.
Wow.
And she was working at the same time.
Oh my gosh. How was she? So she was living in New York?
No, she lived in Denver.
Oh.
And she flew out when I got induced, and then she stayed for 35 days.
Wow.
And so we just kind of made a little home, and, my mom's, my husband didn't even sleep in the bed with me.
Yeah.
But you know what? I feel like when you have a brand new baby, you don't know what to do with it.
No.
So it was no, they're like, here's a baby, and so it was nice to have my mom there in the sense that she knew what to do. She's had 3 kids of her own, and you need to rest yourself, and you're tired, and your boobs are gigantic.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
And you're hungry. You're so hungry.
So when you got here, you had 6-week-old baby.
Yes.
You come into this house. Now, was mom able to come with you down here? Because I feel like you need her here.
So it was actually really great. We had planned a former coworker of my husband's had family down here, and she had gotten laid off. And we were like, hey, we will pay you to unpack our house.
Oh, perfect. That was a clutch move.
The best thing, because I'm thinking to myself, okay, how am I going to be able to unpack? And we did temporary housing at first.
Yeah.
So those 35 days, my mom was like, okay, this is temporary. This doesn't need to stay here. And so that was super helpful to have that. So we came to Delray Beach, and the house was unpacked.
Wow.
Which was very wonderful.
Were you nervous with flying with a little baby?
So we road tripped.
Oh, you did. You drove.
Yes. Because
okay.
I really didn't want to do the first flight being kind of my exit out of New York.
Okay. Okay.
And so we ended up driving, and it took us about 3 days. And then we stopped in Alabama to visit my husband's family. And that was kind of like the in-between while we waited for all of the moving trucks to get here.
Is he from Alabama?
He's from Alabama,
Oh,
yes. Yeah.
I have family from Mississippi. So,
Okay,
you
very
know,
nice.
deep south.
Deep South. Oh, yeah. Just like a different culture.
Yes. Yes, it is.
So that was nice. And honestly, driving with a 6-week-old is much easier than driving with like a 2-year-old.
Oh, yeah, I can see that. I can see that.
So it really wasn't that bad. And I got those portable breast pumps.
Okay.
So we didn't have to do a lot of like stopping.
Wow.
So I had thought through a lot of it of like, okay, how do we make this most seamless? But yeah, the airplane, I just like, she's 6 weeks old. We have a dog. We're going to have so much stuff.
Yeah.
I just didn't, that sounded very stressful.
That makes
for me.
more sense. That makes more sense.
Because then you're like, you've got to make sure you're there at the airport on time, and the stroller and the baby's car seat. And
the baby's so little.
So little.
I don't even know if you can fly at 6 weeks. Can you?
I think you can, but
sure.
then it's like I'm like the ears, I just was like, I want to be at my own pace. Yes, it's faster.
Yeah, a little faster. But but you need your car probably too anyway.
Yeah.
Or did you have a car?
We didn't have a car.
Oh, okay.
In New York, we didn't have a car.
So you just rented a car?
We rented a car.
Okay.
And then we got down here, and that was like our first, when we got to Delray Beach, that was the first thing we did. We were like, gotta get a car.
Wow. So did you feel like you handled that whole time well? Like, I feel like that would send me over the edge to be postpartum and to be moving and coming to a new place.
I think, yes, I'm a little bit of a planner, and I also tend to I don't overthink certain things. I'm like, all right, everything's going to fall in place. The things that we need to do will get done. And I felt because, like even the movers came in, they're like, wow, you guys are so organized.
Oh, and well, that's nice.
Like most people are just like, you come into their house and they're like, where do you need us to start? And my mom's like, everything's over here. And really probably my mom helped a lot in that sense of making sure that I wasn't, because I also couldn't physically move. Like I couldn't, move boxes. They don't really want you to move anything more than the baby. And it was, it was kind of nice in the sense that I didn't have any obligations once I got here. It was just like, you need to take care of the baby. And
yeah, that's your mission.
And that was my mission. And then, once we kind of got comfortable of finding, where do we live and finding a house. And I think actually finding a house was more stressful than moving, to be honest with you.
Oh yeah, I bet.
That's just like,
well, because then did you you bought in 2020?
Yeah.
Okay.
We put our offer in, I think, January 20 something, which was great because we got a wonderful house.
Yeah. And you may not have gotten it if you would have waited any longer.
I know. Well, there's that too. Although I will say, I feel like the market, once kind of everyone was like, I want to move to Florida, a lot of other homes kind of opened up. People are like, ooh, we're going to put our house on the market. So I feel like inventory kind of picked up, but also it was a very fast market once things were going. So
yes, I think you landed in the right spot. I really,
we looked around, and like, it's hard to find a house. And originally we kind of looked in El Cid area in West Palm, and we really liked that. And I was like, there's airplanes flying over us every day.
Yes. Jupiter is just a magical little gem of a place.
Yes. And we like to say too that we moved to Jupiter for our dog.
Oh, Dog Beach.
The Dog Beach is wonderful, and we go there every day. And that's for Bonnie. So,
Bonnie, what kind of dog is Bonnie?
She's a golden doodle.
Okay, cute.
So she lives the life.
Yeah, I bet. So tell me how Motherhood Meals was born for you.
So I think we talked a little bit about postpartum, and I had some birth trauma that I was dealing with around Daphne's birth. Originally, I had my intentions were unmedicated, that I was going to have a hospital birth, but I went with a certified nurse midwife practice, and those were kind of my intentions. And then that didn't happen. And for me, I don't want to say I had postpartum depression or postpartum anxiety, because I was able, during the day, I was pretty functioning. And I didn't think a lot about that, but a lot of times at night when I was by myself, I had a lot of guilt. And maybe I was thinking about this over the last couple of days is it felt more like I'm a very determined person and I gave up too quickly. So I felt like I didn't stand up for myself longer.
In the birth process.
In the birth process, right? Like I didn't say, hey, hold on, I'm going to take a moment.
Yeah.
And, I think when you have your first child, there's a lot of stress and a lot of fear. And I think doctors don't help in that area. And so I was kind of dealing with that. And in New York, I was working full time. When we moved to Florida, they were like, sorry, we don't have a job for you in Florida, which was like very heartbreaking because I loved my job and I had been there for 5 years. And
what were you doing?
So I was in healthcare tech.
Okay.
And I was kind of a project manager, implementation, data integration specialist. And so it was a startup and we worked a lot of hours. And so part of me was thankful when they kind of closed that door for me because I said, okay, now I can just focus on my child.
Yeah, you can be a mom.
Our house, I can be a mom. And that was really great. But I think for me internally, I never thought that I was just going to say goodbye to working.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Because that's just the type of person that I am. But I didn't want to go work 40 plus hours. And then it was funny because, COVID hit and I'm like, oh, so you didn't want remote workers? How's that going for y'all?
Yeah. Yeah, right?
Cool. Can I come back now?
Yeah.
But again, I feel like when doors close or doors don't open, it's kind of a sign that, okay, like you got to move on and try something new and for a reason. And so Daphne then started going to school at 2 years old. And I let myself have a break of just like, okay, because motherhood's a lot. When you're like a full-time mom, it is a lot of work.
Yes.
And had been kind of thinking about that. I wanted to be in the women's health space of some sort because my background is in healthcare. And it was more Medicare, older patients. So I'm like, okay, women's health is really super interesting to me. And my midwife had posted something about postpartum meals. I'm like, oh, this is interesting. Like, what is this? And the woman she had posted had her own kind of training course in postpartum meals. And I thought, okay, I'm gonna just go for this. It was $300. I'm like, let's just do this because I need to put my energy somewhere.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I got 2 chapters in, like, all right, I think I got this. Like, I can do this. And I'm much more of a doer than a reader.
Okay.
Like when it comes to I'm like, I can't read instructions. Like instructions are really hard for me. I want to start doing it.
Yeah.
And so I kind of went through my head and was like, who's pregnant? Like who's about to have a baby? And I had a friend who was about to have a baby. And so I messaged her and I said, hey, can I feed you?
Oh my, well, yes.
I'm thinking of doing this. Can I feed you? Because I wanted to see if I actually wanted, would this interest me?
Yeah.
And would I want to do it? And so it started with her. It was Mackenzie. I don't know if you know Mackenzie Cherry, the Jupiter mom.
Yeah.
Yes. So she was my first customer. And then I found another mom that I knew that was pregnant. And I kind of said, hey, like I'm doing this, again, can I feed you? And just started there. And then it just kind of rolled on. It was a slow growth, which is what I wanted to. I know some people really want that fast, like, okay, let's see it. But I think the slow growth helped me kind of see like, okay, do I like this? How does it work with my schedule and whatnot? And so Motherhood Meals just kind of came about and I was like, let's do it.
Yeah, I love that.
And I started I think her son was born the first week of January in 2022. So it'll be almost 2 years.
Wow.
Coming up.
So what did you provide for her that maybe you realized this is the perfect thing? Or maybe you were like, you know what, that doesn't really work. Did you work out some kinks that way?
It's funny because I think some of the meals that I gave her, they're still on rotation.
Oh, good.
But I've added, I think I started with a couple. I was like, all right, let's do a chili. Let's do a curry, which I really love. And And at that point, I think I was giving her like 3 options just to see, because it takes a lot of work to make food in large batches.
Yeah.
You don't think it is, but you're like, oh, okay. Like, I got to make homemade soup, and, I think I gave her like 12 meals or something like that. And yeah, so that's kind of how it.
Me, who cannot really, I mean, I am not a cook, and I do very simple things because that's what I know.
No.
And if you want a really good smoothie or a salad, I'm your girl. But like cooking something is not my forte. Although I just learned to make like a chicken noodle soup. Ooh. And I do love soup.
Yes.
And actually Lauren brought me, I'm going to just show you right here. She brought me some soups because we had a conversation and talked about soup.
We did talk about soup.
And I love soup. So I was like, I need to like master a soup, And so I did the chicken noodle because my son really likes chicken noodles. So, but what are these?
Okay. So I gave you a green soup, which is leeks, spinach, Swiss chard, carrots, and then that's pureed.
Okay.
And then
sounds delicious.
Then I add quinoa on top of that. So it's kind of like got a nutty flavor to it, but it's a little more chunkier. And that one's great because it has a lot of protein from the quinoa. Mm-hmm. And during postpartum, you're not supposed to drink cold things.
Yes.
So this is a great one for women who love green drinks. I'm like, here's your soup.
Right.
Here's your green soup.
No smoothies.
No smoothies.
Yeah, no salads. Yeah.
No salads. And again, I think it's like an 80-20. I would use an 80-20 rule.
Yeah.
In all things in life.
Yeah, for sure.
And then the other one's my Mexican chicken soup. So I love chicken tortilla soup is like my all-time go-to.
So good.
So good. And so this is kind of my rendition on that. So it's a tomato-based chicken broth. And then it's got lime juice and some cilantro and potatoes and chicken. And so when I don't know how you make your chicken noodle soup right now, but the key.
I couldn't tell you, but I just do
it. The key is actually boiling the bones while you're making the soup.
Okay.
So I use chicken legs.
Okay.
When I make my chicken soup. And so the water boils with the bones and the meat. And so it actually makes your broth while you're cooking it, which is like, it's kind of life-changing.
Yeah.
Versus, I traditionally before this I'd go get chicken broth.
Yeah.
And then I'd cut some chicken and like throw in some vegetables.
Yes. That's kind of, you're describing what I do.
Yes, but that's still delicious. Where this it takes a little bit more time, but you can taste the flavor of the homemade chicken broth is what is kind of the kick.
Yeah.
So that's one of my favorites because I love adding avocado to that. And then I add some tortilla chips, crunchy, because I like it crunchy. Although they say you're not supposed to do crunchy during postpartum either.
Oh, really? Huh. Why no crunchy?
I don't know. I think something in traditional Chinese medicine says crunchy is bad.
Yes. Okay. So I do see an acupuncturist a lot. Yeah. And so, I agree. She's always, like I mentioned, the smoothies and the salads, she's always trying to avert me from that and wanting me to drink more warm things, more tea, which I do have my ginger tea right now. Yeah. I try to be a good student of what she's telling me. And so, all the warm healing foods.
Yes.
She really changed my way of eating. And so I think that's why, I try to seek out the soup. I love having soup in the house.
And soup's great. And especially at night, it's hard in Florida because it's hot.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's why I like the Mexican chicken soup because it feels like a little more cooler.
Yeah.
With like you can add more lime juice too if you wanted. It just has a different, it's not super heavy, just lighter. So But it's hard. I think sometimes when I like soups, stews, that people are probably like, wow, this doesn't fit Florida.
Yes.
But in postpartum, you shouldn't really be outside. You should be in your bed on your couch.
And like you said, like in any healing phase after surgery and illness, the warm is where it's at. Yeah. It really is.
It is. And that's where it's like you think about when you are sick and healing, you tend to eat chicken soup or you eat rice or things that are easily digestible because your body needs that extra energy to heal, right? So if you're eating things and it's taking your body more time to process that, it's taking away healing time. Yeah. Is the way that I kind of think about it in my head of how it kind of shakes out in the end. So.
Yeah. How did you come up with the nutrition that you were going to offer, your menu? Tell me about that process.
So part of it was, Daphne had really severe eczema on her face, to the point where I had to take out dairy and eggs out of my diet. And I kind of was brought to attention of a different kind of way of eating. I'd always been healthy.
Yeah.
But I don't know if you've ever heard of Weston Price. Have you heard of Weston Price?
I feel like it sounds familiar, but I don't know where.
They're very into like the traditional nourishing foods of like what our ancestors ate. So a lot of it is like beef liver and kind of eating nose to tail, which is very different from American eating style.
Yes.
And so I went through this kind of rabbit hole with Daphne where I had to take out eggs and dairy, but then I needed to supplement something for myself and for her because I lost a lot of weight while I was breastfeeding, which is like horrible. It's like the nail on the coffin.
Yeah. You need all the weight.
You need all that weight, And so I had noticed my weight plummeted, her weight plummeted. And so, I was starting to feed Daphne bone marrow. I would make her she was like 9 months old at this point. Right. And, chicken liver and sardines and things that like are super nutritious, right? Like everything's kind of nutritious in one way or another, but followed those guidelines and then brought those into kind of motherhood meals of saying like, we need to be eating this. So if any meat dishes, beef on my menu includes organ meat in it.
Okay.
Which I think for some people are like, oh, I don't know if I want to try that. And I'm like, just try it because no one knows.
Yes.
And I know this because I was feeding it to my mom and she didn't have any idea.
Oh, wow.
And if I told her that, she'd be like, ew, that's disgusting. I don't want to eat it. Right. Yes. But you can't taste it. So I think that's the big thing. And the change that I think you can see, like I've noticed in the last 3 years of eating it, my eyesight is better. I'm convinced that it's the organ meat.
Wow. A lot of collagen, like your hair is healthy.
Here we go. Like, it's probably also that I don't have to be in an office anymore and I'm not blow drying my hair anymore, but I'll take it.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where the meals came about. And then kind of menu wise, I started with a few that were provided from that course I was taking. So I started there. I was like, ooh, okay, this curry looks really good. Curry's really warm. And a lot of the ingredients are great if you're breastfeeding. So like coconut milk is fantastic when you're breastfeeding.
A lot of fat,
right? You want fat, you want protein. And so focused on dishes that were warm and again, things that like I love Mexican chicken soup. Like, I love the tortilla soup. So I knew I wanted to add that. I love meatballs. So I added a meatball dish. I've stayed away from gluten on the menu because I think that's just really hard on everybody's body.
Yes.
And I feel like a lot of people will message me and say, okay, I'm gluten-free and this and that. I'm like, that's great because I've got that covered for you.
Yeah.
And then what else do? I added a pot roast recently, which is now like my new favorite. It took me a while to like perfect the grass-fed grass, that kind of meat's a little different.
Yeah, it is different.
So like my mom always makes a pot roast for Christmas and it's delicious. And it's not, it might be organic. Sometimes it might not be. And everything is organic on my food too as well. So everything down to the spices is organic. But when you cook beef that is grass, even chicken, to be honest with you, the meat's a lot leaner. And so there's not enough fat on it. So I was having a hard time getting this like perfect pot roast of what I thought pot roast should taste like.
Okay.
And I just perfected it like a month ago. And now it's like my new favorite dish.
Oh, wow.
So I'm like, okay,
sounds amazing.
It's so good. But again, it's slow cooked, right? So it's going to be the slower when you cook things, the longer it takes, the better it's easier for you to digest that. So a lot of slow cooking on things or, what else do I do? We have like rice and grains. I let those soak or they're sprouted. So again, it's easier on your digestive. And then, sometimes I might go have soup and I'm like, oh, I really like that soup. Like, let's recreate that at home.
Yeah. I love that.
You know, or I have like some favorites. Like there's a cauliflower soup. I brought this out for Mackenzie the first time, but I don't have a lot of vegetarians.
Oh, interesting.
So Mackenzie was a vegetarian. And so that was fun to do because I was like, okay, it's a little more tricky to think of that. So I was like, oh, I have this delicious cauliflower soup that I've loved over the years. So yeah, I'd love to add more, but sometimes it's like restrictive. Like I'd love to add breakfast burritos, but I can't find a wrap that like
gluten-free.
That's gluten-free, or, you know, a lot of times the ingredients, like if it has crappy oil, I'm not going to put it on my menu.
Yeah. I love that you're very like meticulous with that because that's so important. I feel like I can relate a lot to your story. Having an emergency C-section, I had the same thing. I had a lot of complications, during the birth, during the pregnancy, during the birth, after the fact, spinal headache. I mean, I had all kinds of things happen.
Yeah.
And, you know, like when my husband and I got home from the hospital, first of all, I was there longer than I expected to be. I had to go back into the hospital after I'd gotten home, but I had this baby. I had this beautifully decorated nursery.
Yes.
And I had all the gadgets and I had not a clue what to do. You know, it just was so jarring. And thank God, I'm going to give her a shout out. Gina Connor was my doula, postpartum doula. And thank goodness I had her because there was not anything like this that existed at the time. No. And she literally took care of me. I mean, my husband did and my family did too, but she really made sure that I was eating. Yeah. She was cooking nutritious food for me. She was incredible. And I was very lucky to have her at that time and to be able to kind of be like nurse back to health because I was really struggling. And so that's why this is so important to me, like supporting women in the fourth trimester. Can we talk a little bit about like, what is the fourth trimester? A lot of people have not even heard like it referred to that. Yeah. And I don't even know that I really heard it, you know, be called that until like more recent years, you know?
Yeah. I think there's definitely been a change in acknowledging that there is a fourth trimester. Mm-hmm. I think there's something too that the baby physically doesn't know that it's outside of the womb yet.
Yes.
For like
I read this.
that first 3 months. So it is kind of like to the baby, they're still connected to you. Mm-hmm. And that's why they want you close. Mm-hmm. And that's why they, you know, need your constant attention.
Yes.
I think there's a shift. There has been a shift. Even from when I had given birth 4 years ago, I think there's a big shift in how women are thinking about postpartum, and realizing that they do need support and that the baby nursery maybe isn't as important.
Yes.
And the gadgets aren't as important. Mm-hmm. And so, the fourth trimester has now become a thing, which I'm so happy about because I think that's where a lot of your postpartum depression and postpartum anxiety kind of stems from. I think that if, you know, in traditional Chinese medicine, they actually believe that if you don't practice confinement, which is what they call it, that you will have complications. You will have depression. You will have anxiety. You won't age well. That's what they say.
Oh, well, I mean, God,
you know, like that's how serious it is. And I have some Chinese American friends, and you know they've practiced that, and part of it was really hard because it goes against a lot of what our American culture is, which is bounce back.
Bounce back.
You know, get back in your jeans, get back to what you were doing, hold your baby on your hip, and do everything else.
Yes.
And I think that's just so detrimental to women in general.
Agree. Totally agree.
And I think it's wonderful to see that people are taking a step back to say, I'm gonna take a step back from my job. Mm-hmm. I'm gonna take a step back from some of my responsibilities. Mm-hmm. And focus, because it's really, I think we say, oh, birth is a miracle, right? Pregnancy is a miracle. And then the baby comes out and it's like, okay, thanks mom for just creating a human being in your body.
Yes.
Right. Which in itself is unbelievable what happens to your body. Like it was just, someone had shared it that the organs, your organs change, your whole body changes itself to support a child growing in your body. They say your brain changes.
I believe it.
Physically changes,
I
right?
believe that.
To like take on that new role. And so we always say, oh, we're going to bounce back. It's like, no, you're not going to bounce back. Like you are a different person. And I think this idea of matrescence, I don't know if you've heard that word kind of come up. Matrescence is essentially like the adolescence, right? When we go through puberty or adolescence and whatnot, it's for mothers. Like you're going through a shift with your hormones, with everything. Like you are not the same person that you were 9 months prior to giving birth. Like you are actually a different human being.
Yeah.
And so this idea that you have to get back to that is just, I think it's so toxic. I keep saying the word toxic, but it's just sad to me that in America, we don't really have a culture around postpartum and the respect around postpartum where other cultures do. Asian cultures very much respect postpartum. A lot of Hispanic cultures as well focus on those 40 days, like be home for 40 days.
40 days. Yep.
And I think I was reading too in the Haitian culture, they require the women to stay home for a year.
Wow.
Like they don't even introduce the baby to anybody.
Wow.
I was reading something about that the other day and I was like, wow, like I always thought that, the Chinese confinement was pretty intense.
Yeah.
But I was just reading because I think it's super interesting to start looking at cultures. And when I start to think about food, I'm like, ooh, okay, like I want a Mexican chicken soup. So like, let me learn about, in Mexico, it's called quarantina, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you're home for 40 days.
Well, you can honor that through what you're doing. And I love that. I love that.
And so many different, I was like, oh, I really want to add like a lamb dish. So I was like, okay, like what do they do in like Algeria, like what's their postpartum, or Morocco, like what are they doing for postpartum? And all of these cultures have rituals and we don't.
Yeah.
And I hope that we can start to bring that back to say like, let's start to honor the mother.
Yes.
Because we don't do a very good job. We do Mother's Day.
Yeah, we do. But I totally agree with you. And I actually read, because I was just reading up on the fourth trimester, and Columbia University said that 40% of women don't even attend their postpartum doctor's appointment. And that's a big problem, because I think there's so much that gets lost in that. First of all, it's that we don't care about you. Like you said, you just had this baby. Your whole life has been turned upside down. It's rocked your world. I know it rocked mine.
Yeah.
In the best way possible. I mean, such a gift, but also it's hard. Let's acknowledge that it is hard. It is not the way it looks on social media. It is, if you would have seen me, like I think when Gina arrived at my home, the very first day that she was coming and I had just gotten home from the hospital, emergency C-section, had complications. I opened the door and my robe was just like open.
Okay, but this is funny because I've dropped off food to some women and they're like, come on in. I'm like, I've seen your boobs. I've seen your bed. I've seen your house.
Yeah. All the things,
and I love the vulnerability of seeing that. Like it means so much to me when someone invites me into their home to say like, okay, like, can you come bring the food and put it in my fridge for me?
Yeah.
Like, sure. Of course I will.
Yeah.
And their boobs are leaking. And it was really sweet. One day I went to someone's house and their mom was there and they were really practicing staying in bed for the first week. And so the husband was like, you can go upstairs. She wants to meet you.
Oh.
So I went up to her bedroom and I felt like that's such a personal,
intimate, very intimate,
and I felt so much gratitude to be able to be invited, like I'm a stranger in your house. Like you don't know me.
Yeah. Yeah.
To let me in there. And then there's sometimes where I've fed mothers and I've never even met them.
Oh,
like sometimes with Nikki, like I knew who Nikki was, but like I would drop stuff off in her.
Yeah.
I'd put it in her, outdoor garage in her.
Oh yeah.
In her refrigerator out there.
I feel like that garage is always open.
It's always open.
For
I'd be
whoever
like,
wants to go in
there.
there.
And like, whoever needs anything, it's in here. But yeah, can't remember what we were talking about in the beginning, but again, postpartum of bringing that back because it's really a vulnerable stage.
Yes.
And we need help.
We need help. I needed a lot of help. And I didn't really Well, I did plan. I planned to have Gina for, I think, 4 weeks originally. Right. And then I realized I needed much more help, after
and
that.
What was, when Gina was over, what kind of services was she providing?
She was mainly, I was so focused on, if I held my son all day long and that was all that I did, that's all I wanted to do. I just wanted to be there in any way. We were very it was a lot of attachment. So he, the fancy nursery, he maybe slept in his crib a couple of times in the first year. I mean, that was it. I'm like, thank goodness I had this fancy crib from Restoration Hardware, Yes. But we didn't even use it and it was beautiful. But I ended up donating it to a place that has, babies kind of coming in and out of there. Yeah. And I was like, I have to honor this crib, even though he didn't sleep in it. I felt like I needed something to do something symbolic with it. Yeah. And so I gave it to them and now tons of babies have slept in that crib and that warms me. And I tell him, your baby crib is, at this place. And a lot of babies get to sleep there and he loves that, but he knows he never slept in it. He's like, no, well, and that's, never.
It's funny because we knew that we were moving to Florida. And so I didn't plan a crib. I literally converted my walk-in closet in our New York City apartment for 6 weeks into her nursery.
Oh, I like
because
that.
I just wanted something to have it. But because I didn't have that, I had no drive to do that because I was like, one, I don't have the space. And then two, we were in temporary housing. So to your point, she slept with us first of all, she slept in our room until she was 6 to 7 months old. Mm-hmm. And even, I think she stayed in longer with us. It might've been a year. Cause it's just nice. It's easier to have them next to you.
Yeah. They want to be close. I know, I felt like I just learned so much from Gina and like you were saying, the different practices postpartum, we did a Thai belly wrap, just kind of incorporating different things into the healing process, like castor oil packs for the scarring and the inflammation, for the C-section scar. And, but yeah, I mean, us women, we go
through a lot.
We go through a lot, guys.
And I think too, because of the way, I blame Hollywood a little bit of what they think birth looks like. Yeah. And what postpartum looks like. And it's really it's not that. So I applaud all these women who are sharing kind of their real stories of here, you've got milk stains all the time. Right. Yes. And you, at any point in time, you might have to pull out your boob or and I think there is a shift happening and I'm so happy that it is because I think we need it because the rates of postpartum depression and postpartum anxiety are through the roof. Mm-hmm. And I think if we don't take the time to rest, that's where it starts to kind of fester and begin because we are overwhelmed, right? Yeah. And we are burnt out. Mm-hmm. And so I think moving towards kind of food and taking that time to just be, which I think is really hard for a lot of women to just sit and be. And it was even hard for me to think about, but my mom was there and I was like, all right, well, you're doing everything. So this is perfect. Yes, I will go watch all of my Outlander series while my 4-week-old sleeps, this is great.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I felt I felt like once I had my son, I was almost 3 days in the hole of no sleep. Yeah. And so I just could never catch up on the sleep. So every single time he was asleep, I've got to figure this out. I've got to sleep, you know?
Sleep.
If you don't feel like sleeping,
I know.
Sleep.
Sleep. And I think I know when they say when baby sleeps, you should sleep. And I also say when baby eats, you should eat.
Yes. Yes.
Because I think a lot of the hanger comes in when you're not eating.
Yes.
And that's what happened to me. I noticed that I was really good at eating breakfast, mm-hmm. not so good at eating lunch, mm-hmm. good at eating dinner, but that lunchtime, that noon to 5, wasn't eating.
That's still a problem, I feel like, for me, to do that. So to be able to have, just a meal right here, ready to go. So important. Do you do kind of any snack type
You know what? I haven't gotten into the snacks. I was doing a hummus or like, I guess it was a white bean dip. Because everything, I feel like snacks are crunchy. So I'm trying to find the non-crunchy.
Yeah, non-crunchy.
I do like a little bite. It's got like it's like a chocolate tahini muffin.
Oh, that's
really good. And it's like like a two bite muffin. So that's been good.
Good fats. And like, isn't the tahini good for lactating?
Yeah.
I think I've heard that.
Yeah, it's sesame.
Yeah.
And so that's been a good one to add. But ideally, as I grow, I would love to add that. I'd love to add family meals because a lot of people will be like, okay, well, who's going to feed my husband?
Yes.
Who's going to feed my kids? And not all kids like soup. And it depends. Like they might have a 2-year-old, they might have a 4-year-old, they might have a 9-year-old. The 9-year-old might take the soup. But the 2 and 3 are, it also depends on how each family feeds their children. Cause I feel like that's a very big, Daphne eats kind of whatever we eat or a variation of it. Where, some kids are on chicken nuggets and mac and cheese diet, which, hey, you need to get them to eat. So I understand.
Yes, you get it. Yeah.
But ideally, I think I grow into some family meals that are easy. So that mom then really doesn't have to focus on that or, dad doesn't have to try and learn how to cook for the first time.
Right.
My husband doesn't cook. So I say
that like, oh gosh.
So it's like, it's on me.
Yes.
He'd be like, I can order something for you.
Yes. That's what I like to offer too. I'm like, I can order something. Does that work?
Yeah.
So I see a lot of expansion in your future though, because I just think I love that it's for new moms, but I think it could be for anyone. Like we were saying, like, I was like, I want soup.
Yeah.
Can I have soup from you?
Have soup.
So
and
I can just order soup from you.
Is everything's frozen, right? So I've taken the pressure off of it having, and that kind of limits menu options with it being frozen. But I want to take the pressure off women of not having to say like, oh, well, I have someone delivered me food and I have to eat it in 3 days.
Right.
Because then that adds more anxiety to you, right?
It does. You don't want to waste it.
You don't want to waste it because you just spent a lot of money on it.
Yeah.
So when it's frozen, I'm like, you know what? Take out a meal a day beforehand, let it defrost. If you don't have time to do that, you can rip off the cover and throw it in a pot. But again, it's instead of snacking, because that's what I did a lot, is in that 12 to 5 as I snacked thinking I was, going to be good.
Yeah.
And then 5 o'clock comes around and it's the witching hour for everybody.
Yeah. Especially if you're nursing, like you are hungry. I remember thinking I can eat whatever I want to eat right now. Like this is.
I remember like I would eat dinner and at midnight I'd wake up and I'm like, can I have a hamburger?
Yeah.
I could eat whatever. And instead, like I was eating soup or I was eating like cereal or like bars and stuff like that, which is good. It's better than, nothing.
Yeah,
but
it's better than nothing. But yeah,
it's like if I'm like, oh, you could like heat that up and have it ready to go. And just, if you want to pop it in the stove, if it's already defrosted, it takes, 3 minutes to heat up anything. So
yeah, well, I love it. I think it's such an amazing idea. So happy that you're offering this. And I want to ask you just a couple little wrap up questions. Yeah. I want to know, what are some things in your wellness toolbox?
So I think my first is going to be my bone broth.
Oh yeah.
Because it's just, I find myself that I need to probably be drinking it more than I, push it. But there's so many properties around it that are just healing and helps your gut and just makes it makes me feel better.
Yeah.
I noticed too, it just reminds me of like having chicken soup a lot.
Very healing, warming.
Very healing, warming. And then I think water for me, like water of any kind. So like being in the ocean, taking a bath.
Yeah. Like I'm a water girl. What's your sign? What's your astrological sign?
So I'm an Aries.
Oh,
but my moon's in Cancer. So that's where my water.
A lot of water
comes in. And then the third one was hard. I want to say kindness, of just being kind to yourself and kind to others.
Yeah.
Because I think if that's how you kind of push your agenda in the world, then it's kind of easier to get through. So
yeah, you can't go wrong when there's like kindness and love behind it. And I can feel so much love with what you're doing. And I think that's so important,
I know. A customer one time said, I can feel how much love you put into this. And I was like, thank you, because I do. And, especially too, when, anytime I made broth for, Jeff Aaronsman, I was like, I'm putting my healing powers in this.
Yes.
And I even, I don't remember if you remember Nicole Robbins, her baby was down in Miami. It had some, like, she was born and then, they had to like airlift her to Miami. And so I like had sent her food and I was like, I literally like the food that I'm making you, I am like putting in so much like prayer and love and good thoughts. And the fact that someone can feel that means a lot to me, because I think food is medicine and the way that you prepare it is also, you know, important.
I think that's really special. Oh, so special. And I just want to know one thing. What is some advice that you have for new moms?
I would say be open to receiving help, but also open to asking for help. Because I think we try to do everything.
Yes.
And then we get overwhelmed. And sometimes we don't want help, right? Like the other day, my mom was like, I want to help you organize this closet. And I'm like, I want to do it myself. And she's like, why won't you take my help?
Was this the craft closet? I think I saw something about
this. Was the craft closet. And I had started it and it took me, I wasn't finished with it. And so it was over Thanksgiving break. And my mom's like, I want to help you. Yeah. Let me help you. And I was like, but I want to do it myself. Right. And then I was like, okay, you know what? Take the help. And guess what? Not only did my mom and I get the craft closet done, we got the mudroom done.
Oh,
and it felt so much better. And if I didn't accept the help, it would have still been a mess and a disaster. And it would have been like, I will get to that. I will get to that.
Yeah.
And I think as new moms and just moms in general, and maybe just women, like we want to be perceived that we can do it all. And I don't think we have to do it all. So I think kind of taking that barrier down to say like, we can ask for help.
Yeah.
But then receive the help. Cause I know I have some friends too that like, they need help and you ask them and then they don't want the help.
Yeah.
Which I'm a perfect example, right? Like I just did it.
And then same thing.
And then I had to take down the barrier and say like, yes, come help me. Like,
yes.
Like, why am I holding that?
Yeah.
Why am I saying you can't do this, Mom?
I think that is maybe a female, thing. I see a lot of women do that. I do it myself too. And it's also like giving up the control of it. Yes. I don't know. It's really hard, but I think especially for a new mom, take the help.
Take the help.
Take the help.
All of it.
Let yourself rest, honor your body. We spoke about it with Lonnie too. And you just mentioned it as well as like, you're not going to bounce back. Get ready to emerge as a whole new person. A whole new badass person.
Yeah, and think about the things that you loved about yourself prior and bring those back if you can. And like the ones that you didn't like keep them in your 20s, you know, and then have great memories of like, remember in my 20s when I did XYZ, like how fun that was, where it's like, it's you're a different person.
Yeah, you really are. So. Well, Lauren, it was a pleasure.
It was so much fun.
Thank you so much. Let's just say real quick where people can find you.
Yeah. So as of right now, Instagram's my best bet. So it's Motherhood Meals.
Okay.
And I am a one stop. I am the full owner. So I do everything.
Yeah.
So when you message me, it's just me. And I'm doing all the cooking and I mostly do the delivery. And then a website's coming soon. It was one of those where I was going to do it by myself. And then I asked for help.
Sub it out. Yeah. Give it to someone
hard.
else.
It took me like 8 months to say, Lauren, you're not going to get this done.
Yes.
Give it away. So
you just think that you can do it, which you can.
You can.
You just don't have all the hours in the day to do it.
No, you don't. So, as of right now, Instagram and then website to come. So.
Okay. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.